Good evening. Welcome to the findings presentation for the Ada County Parks and Waterways Master Plan. We started a process some time ago whereas we have attempted to learn and discover things about the county, about the program, and most importantly about your needs and desires for parks and recreation services and services related to natural areas and waterways. My name is Jeff Milkus, and I'm the project manager for the master plan. I work with a company called BerryDunn, and we work in concert and partnership with the staff at Ada County Parks and Waterways to produce a long-range master plan for the department. Art?
Hi, good evening. I'm Art Thatcher. I'm a manager with BerryDunn. I'm serving as the engagement manager for this project. I been consulting for about 10 years. Prior to that, I spent 30 years as a Parks and Recreation Administrator in the Hampton Roads region of Virginia. So very excited to be here in the county and working on this project.
Okay. Well, we'll start right in with what we've found. The intention tonight is to provide you everything that we have learned having to do with the master plan regarding things we understand now and learned from a community engagement process that we'll talk about, from a needs assessment survey, and from our community profile of the county. We also will be talking this evening a little bit about the level of service, meaning what options and what kinds of parks and how many parks and what goes in those parks in terms of county opportunities. So no decisions have been made, and to this point we're still looking for your input. We certainly appreciate the input of everybody who's already stepped forward to assist us, but again, until the master plan is actually adopted, we continue to solicit your input. The vision for the plan is a 10-year update to the 2007 Parks and Waterways Master Plan. The Parks and Waterways Master Plan that existed and that still is in force has a number of goals and policies that go with it that align with the county's comprehensive plan. Those will be incorporated into our update to this master plan. Our vision for the plan is to create a fully implementable plan, something that won't just sit on the shelf, but will take your input and really put it to work. We want a clear vision and an action plan, a plan that's in concert with other county and other planning documents. We, of course, will have the plan based really on very robust community engagement, and we'll focus on those areas that we consider to be gaps in service and those areas that can help deliver parks and recreation services. So we'll start right in with the community profile, and this, among many different kinds of planning requirements, really kind of rises to the top in terms of importance. As you'll see here, the simple population numbers from 2022 at 530,285 people, by 2050 we're anticipating that to grow to over 721,000. And of course that has a lot of impact and ramifications on what kinds of programs and things that the county will need to do to meet your needs moving forward. We looked at the county profile, and you can see that there's somewhat of a spread of individual ages spread out among the different age groups and among children. We didn't find anything that was really earth-shaking in terms of this part of the profile, except that your community is growing in terms of senior populations, older adults, something to keep in mind. We looked at the profile in terms of race and ethnicity, because cultural differences can also impact what a Parks and Recreation agency might offer. At the very top, you'll see that the white population has projected to fall from 82 in 2022 to 80.6% in 2027. What it's telling us is that your community is getting more diverse as it grows. We've included in this chart that you see behind me the number of population that are of Hispanic background. And you can see that there's a bit of a growth there as well.
So additionally, kind of looking at the demographics, we also look at trends, national and regional trends that occur. And so one of the things that we look at is the impact of outdoor recreation on the economy of Idaho and kind of the things that it generates. So we look at the outdoor recreation industry. It creates 78,000 direct jobs annually. Contributes about $7.8 billion to in total spending on activities and equipment, and then additionally creates medical savings by spending time in the outdoors and providing physical and mental health. We use Esri's business, their industry standards as we look at activities. They, through their American survey, look at activities for adults. And so one of the things that we looked at was comparing the county to the state of Idaho with some different trends. And so this one shows fitness trends, and you can see that walking for exercise is the highest of those that are recorded. And you can see that the county is a little bit higher than the state average, and followed by swimming and weightlifting, and then also jogging and running. We can also look at participation rates. And what this one is showing is a 5-year change over the period, and it shows what it looks at is the annual average growth. And so you can see in that 5-year group, almost all of the activities are in a negative, and that was during the COVID years. And so as we began to come out of COVID, you can see those numbers have grown. And so in that 2-year change over the last 2 years, especially in this area, you can see canoeing has increased by 2.3% in that change. Recreational kayaking, a little over 17% increase, and then also stand-up paddleboarding, which are all activities that are participated in the county.
Okay. Public engagement was an important part of what we did in the beginning of the study, and then we followed that up months later with a second opportunity to engage with the community. And these are kind of engagement by the numbers. We had 11 individuals that participated as stakeholders. A stakeholder we define as somewhat of an individual in a leadership role within the community. So they might have been elected officials, they might have been leadership in industry with the school districts in the area, individuals that are on the board or advisory boards to the county department here. We wanted to hear from them and get their take. And then we opened up a number of focus groups, and the intention there was to hear from the community as a whole, but also individuals that may have had a vested interest or were really interested in particular parts as advocates for certain kinds of recreation or hiking or trail use or park use. We wanted to give everyone an opportunity to get to that table. There were 76 people that participated there. We had 10 staff members, realizing that the challenges and opportunities that the county offers, the staff on the team live those challenges daily and really have a very firm, good understanding. We received 157 different observations and comments from the staff. We had 11 people that participated at a public forum during the engagement process. And then in August, as we'll show you in a few moments, we came back and set up here in Barber Park to give people opportunity to prioritize different options. What we were doing was attempting to kind of test some of the conclusions that we had come to with the engagement. We had 133 people that participated in those activities. So what we learned in the engagement was top priorities for the department are open space preservation, are education and stewardship, connecting trails and access, preservation, meaning keeping things wild, coordination with other jurisdictions and partnerships. We'd like to point out that the engagement is one part of the overall planning process, and in such, if something made the top priority, it's obviously very, very important. But what we'll look for is the intersection between what we learned in the engagement, as well as the survey, as well as the level of service study that we did. Where those things come together, they'll tell us that those are really the highest of priorities. Public engagement in terms of vision. We ask folks, what do you see in the future? Well, balancing that preservation with active recreation, understanding that the population is going to grow became really important to people. Protecting, preserving, and the cohesive trails. Again, that came out in the engagement process. When we ask folks, what do you prefer in terms of new park components? We learned about dog off leash opportunities, development at the Hubbard Reservoir, and other ways and other places to put in and take out some of those rafts or kayaks, inflatables in order to use recreate on the Boise River. We ask folks as well, we ask our participants, where are areas that are typically underserved? And what we were told was the south and southwest part of the county, southwest Boise, there's somewhat of a lack of parks or facilities. Connections to the Greenbelt in the south part of the county. There's Glenwood Garden City. There's a lack of open space is what people told us. Although we can tell you that there's already in development at the Expo Idaho sites to help fill that void. And again, the Hubbard Reservoir area in the south part of the county is an opportunity, as we're told in the engagement. Areas of potential improvement. Better connectivity and coordination of various entities within the county. A better understanding of conservation needs became important. Reducing conflicts between users in the green belts and the trails as part of a growing system and extremely well-used resources or assets. Folks that might be walking with small children, might have a conflict with somebody using the trail on a skateboard, say. So it's important that at one point or another that we look at addressing some of those conflicts. Better defining the county responsibilities. This is something that came up over and over again in engagement. The county is in a unique position because they really have the opportunity to kind of fill the gaps between a lot of other neighboring jurisdictions to make sure that there's fluid service and fluid delivery of parks and recreation services. Unfortunately, for a lot of people, they don't understand necessarily what role and how many jurisdictions. What we know as a walker or a hiker is that we have this wonderful asset in the Greenbelt. What people don't always understand is that there are various jurisdictions that are helping to manage that. Areas of potential improvement also included developing long-term and a sustainable funding plan, which is always important, and increasing the geographic distribution of opportunities, meaning that there's equity between the three political districts, say, or throughout the county in terms of what people have access to. Art?
Sure. So what we did from there is we took that information and we created some storyboards, and so came back to Barber Park during the float season to really give the community and the participants an opportunity to tell us some of their priorities, and we used a dot voting process, dotocracy, and you can see from this illustration, from those issues and priorities that we heard from the focus groups and stakeholders, we provided them and gave people a dot that they could vote on, so they could put a dot on each one of those. And you can see from the distribution of how some of those came out. And so as we kind of look at the public engagement, kind of the top 3 priorities among those, through that dot process, protecting the natural resources was received the most dots, followed by the development of resources and river access, then dog off-leash parks and trails, and then development of additional trails and connectivity. We also asked about priorities asked them to use their number 1 priority. And so you can see that it really remained kind of in that same process, protecting the natural environment, taking care of the current parks and trails, expanding trails and expanding parks, being those that received a number 1 priority. So another tool that we used during this process was Social Pinpoint. And Social Pinpoint was an interactive website that was up. We provided a QR code so people could access it, and it gave us an opportunity to ask about ideas that people might have, and you could register, give your idea, and then other users like Facebook could thumb up and thumb down those ideas and actually add additional comments. We also had a forum on there that people could offer programs and services that they would like to see in the future. Both of those started in March and ran for about 6 or 8 weeks. As you can see from the engagement, we had a little over 4,000 site visits through the app. We had 958 unique users, so people who registered, and then we had another 43 unique stakeholders who were part of that process. We had a mapping tool that we used, and 98 people used the mapping tool and provided comments there. We had 17 responses on the forum board, as well as 32 ideas. And then we also had a budgeting exercise. And so from the list of priorities and programs that we heard through the public engagement, we gave people $200, and in $5 increments they could spend their money on those projects. And so 63 people participated in that budgeting exercise, and so you can see from this how they spent their money. You can see the largest portion of that was acquiring land for preservation for preservation of open space and habitat, followed by the Ada Eagle Bike Park trails, and then trail connectivity and expansion, and then the Greenbelt pathway improvements, really being kind of those top 4, followed by acquiring land for recreational use and development. So additionally, we had many comments that were received, both for for Ada County, for the Parks and Waterways, as well as the other jurisdictions. And really those kind of top comments, as we compiled those, investing in the Greenbelt and expansion, preserving and protecting the Boise River, as well as the Greenbelt expansion improvements for bicyclists, walkers, and their families.
Okay. Well, we took what we learned in the engagement process, the results that we've shared with you tonight, plus a lot more, and used that to help develop a needs assessment survey instrument that then was mailed to quite a number of people within the community. 4,500 copies were mailed out for a random invitation survey that was intended and ended up to be statistically valid in terms of the results. In addition to that, we opened up at the end of the survey process an open link survey that was whereas we encouraged everyone in the county and the community to participate and take that survey if they could. We ended up with a total of 689 responses. We compared the two different data sets and realized that they were very, very close in terms of what people that were randomly selected told us in answering the questions of the survey and the open link. And so for the purposes of our reporting tonight, we've put those two together. We looked at, when we asked folks on the survey, we asked them where they lived, and for a particular reason. We wanted to know, when we broke these out by district, where people came from, but most important is it gave us the opportunity to ask some questions about people that may live in the south versus people that live in the north or the northwest. Are there differences between those zones, for instance? So this is what we ended up with in terms of the analysis. 49% male responses, 57% 44 years and younger. 44% of households have children still in the home. 64% of our respondents have a dog. 91% own their own home. 8% have a need for disabilities support. 9% have a Hispanic, relate themselves as Hispanic, and 60% of respondents live in a household with at least $100,000 income. What's important to understand here too is that as the responses came in and were analyzed, the responses were weighted to ensure that the amount of responses in certain categories accurately reflected the community here within the county. Okay. Here are some key findings that we learned from the survey. Restrooms in parks and large regional parks are the most important facilities and amenities, but they did score lower in terms of meeting community needs. So we asked the respondents, what's most important to you, and how well is does the county meet those needs? In some cases, the needs met was not just the county, but it included other municipalities and providers of recreation, because at the end of the day, the level of service for most residents, it doesn't matter quite as much whether or not it's their needs for a particular type of recreational experience are met by the county versus another entity. What's important is that the level of service is provided to them in some way or another. Respondents feel that acquiring open space, providing opportunities for active recreation are really, really, really very important.
Why don't you just run through that?
Okay.
I'll jump out.
Other key findings: most familiar park sites and those frequently visited were the Boise River, the Greenbelt, and the Ridge to Rivers trails. Respondents were a little less aware of the Hubbard Reservoir Recreation Area and the Red Hawk Conservation Area. The overall physical condition and cleanliness of the County Parks and Waterways sites received very, very high ratings. 91% of survey respondents rated the physical condition and cleanliness as good or excellent. The main reason for visiting park sites was to walk or hike. That doesn't surprise me in this environment, and I was very pleased to see the rated physical condition. It tells us that the staff are working really hard to make sure your experiences are very positive. Over 51% of respondents float the Boise River between Barber Park and Ann Morrison Park at least once a summer, and we've got some other data that we'll share with you in a moment on that. Other key findings: respondents generally feel very welcome in Ada County Parks and Waterways, parks and recreation areas or sites. We asked this in terms of individuals of Hispanic background, individuals who have a need for ADA accommodation as well, and we'll share those responses with you shortly. Acquiring land for preservation of open space and habitat becoming even more important now as we really understand the tremendous growth in the county here in terms of population over the future years. Communication to the public is somewhat somewhat average, being with 1 being not very effective, 5 being very effective, average 2.8. We have the opportunity to better understand how residents and visitors prefer communication. It's by email, the current newsletter, which is the County Parks and Waterways newsletter, and through social media. We do recognize there are some differences based on your age, and we are providing that information to the county for future marketing efforts as well, and we'll share that with you here later this evening. Increasing the financial allocation from the county, the most supported funding source, but overall, the individuals that reported to us in the survey were very positive about supporting, ensuring that the county programs continue in a sustained manner.
Yeah, so, excuse me. So as we look at the survey results in a little bit more detail, these are shown by those 3 districts as well as the overall responses. And so we asked survey participants what the most important facilities and amenities were within the county. And so responses by district, you can see that restrooms in parks really was the number 1 overall, as well as within the districts, followed very closely by a large regional park. You can see that District 3 rated that a little bit higher at 88%, to the other 2 at 84 and 85. The other top 5 were park amenities, so lights, water fountains, those comfort amenities within the parks, river access, additional river access points, as well as picnic shelters and shelter areas. So we also asked about the kind of how those were meeting the needs and how some facilities were meeting the needs. And you can see that overall, as well as by district, playgrounds on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being definitely meeting the needs, and 2 and 4 being meeting the needs. So in that higher range, you can see that playgrounds, mountain bike trails, large regional parks, park amenities, again those lights, water fountains, and your picnic shelters and picnic areas, really still again rating in those top 5, not only as important but also as meeting the needs of the community. One of the things that we're able to do is we take those and we can plot those on an importance and a needs met graphic, and you can see that as we look at the 4 quadrants, there's in the upper left-hand corner an unnecessary strength, and then in the bottom left-hand corner is that acceptable weakness. The upper right-hand quadrant required strengths, and then the bottom areas requiring improvement. And you can see the 2 that really shown out were the restrooms in parks as well as river access points as really the most important and areas that needed to be addressed. Some of those others, benches on hiking trails as well as indoor rental space, not being quite as important as the other outdoor amenities. And so we also asked about the top 3 importances, and this was pulled out by families with children and then households without children. And you can see that a large regional park really resonated with both groups as the number 1 priority. Same with restrooms in parks. And then, but you can see that, not surprisingly, those households with children had a greater emphasis towards playgrounds as those without, 56% versus 15%, and then the same with kind of river access points. Those with children don't necessarily spend as much time on the river as those without. So we also asked about reasons for visitations. What do you do when you go to the park? And so to take a walk or to hike was that number 1 priority The number one thing that people were doing when they come to the parks, 83% of the respondents come to the parks to walk or hike. Spending time with family and friends was number two, followed by being close to nature, and then number four, and number five, kind of floating the Boise River and for the river access and lake access. So we also asked about frequency for floating the Boise River. And as we talked about earlier, 26% of those respondents float the river multiple times during the summer. And then 25%, about a quarter of the respondents, come at least once during the summer. So as we looked at as we asked what would increase your use, we asked what they do, and then what would increase your use of the facilities. And so more amenities, again, more restrooms, shade, water fountains, those things that we heard earlier in the survey. Facilities closer to where I live, in those areas that had low level of service. Improved communication about offerings, more places to walk my dog off leash, and then better conditions, maintenance of the parks, trails, and facilities, kind of overall in the system.
Okay. Again, as we mentioned earlier, we wanted to test how welcome people feel in the parks. And what we learned is that on the scale 1 to 5, the average is 4.5. 63% feel very, very welcome. 29% feel, really fairly welcome. So combined, those two, you're looking at over 91%, which is really, really significant. We ask folks that have a need for ADA services or accommodation, how welcome do you feel in the park, or in the parks or on the trails and such, and ended up again being over 90%, feeling very, very welcome. And so we feel really good about that and where that's the opportunities there. So we ask about Hispanic ethnicity. Ask you how welcome do you feel? Again, still over 90%, an average of 4.2% in terms of folks who are of Hispanic background. Excuse me. I made an error there. What I gave you with the over 90% is the overall. For Hispanic, particularly, it looks like it's about 74% that felt very welcome, which is a little less than the rest of the data set. We looked at future priorities. Acquiring land for preservation became really at the very, very top. The two colors on the slide you see are very positive ends. On the 1 to 5 scale, the blue represents 4 and the green represents 5. So these are some pretty high numbers that you can see. Acquiring land for use development, which is a little different than acquiring land for preservation, but you've got both of those as the top two future priorities. The Boise River Greenbelt Pathway management and improvements was up there. You don't really see a drop off here until perhaps under the 60%, but still improving parking at Barber Park, the Ada Eagle bike path or bike park additional trails, 51%. These are all future priorities that one way or another, as population changes and you'll have needs, these are areas that the survey respondents told us that we needed to pay attention to. In terms of effective communication, again, we had shown you some of this under the key findings, but really there were only 23% of respondents that thought communication was really, really good or very, very effective. And so there is some room there to increase communication. We asked people about how their current communication method is. Almost 60% said, well, we hear offerings and opportunities through word of mouth. and then local media, and then social media. So the areas that they do not receive information would be email at a low number. The current newsletter, people are not receiving their information that way, or through school or email newsletter. When we asked him, took it a step further, we asked him how they would prefer to receive communication. And you can see email, although it was low on the list, as well as the current newsletter, are up more near the top. What we've done here, though, is broken it out by age group that'll allow the department and the county here to modify the way that they market and communicate to certain groups based on the programs and the age groups they're wanting to work with. You can see the top two overall on the far right. Social media and email are the way that folks would like to receive information. Interestingly, people who are of younger age aren't really interested in email, as you would expect, but they're very interested in social media. Older adults, those beyond 75, must not have a Facebook account, and they're not participating that way in terms of hearing or wanting to hear information. We ask about funding support. We know that there's so many positive things happening, as we've learned here within the county for Parks and Recreation. The survey respondents told us that increasing an allocation from the county, they really believe the county has a responsibility to provide the services. But beyond that, additional private-public partnerships would be good, and a bond referendum if there are specific projects that are identified. So those three numbers being 76% from county, private-public partnerships, 72% of survey respondents thought that was a good idea, that they would either definitely support or probably support. And then, of course, the bond was 69% that they would either definitely or probably support. In addition to the needs assessment questions, there were opportunities for open-ended responses. And people wrote quite a few comments for us. And we lumped them into kind of buckets of park development and maintenance, recreation activities, communication, environmental conservation, river management, accessibility, and had parking in there, because these were the areas where there were lots of comments. The comments will be available on the county website and through the project area at some point here when we finish evaluating and assessing them all. But enhancing trail connectivity, say, shows up there. Focus on river cleanup areas, request for walking paths. Many of the comments that you'll see are repeated comments, and those are the ones that we really focus on. Now, as we get nearer to the end of our presentation, we wanted to provide you a little bit of information about the frequency of Barber Park visits. Because during the summer, as you come to the park and see the float season underway, you know all the wonderful things happening, but all of the work that has to go into that, and the challenges with parking and smooth flow of the buses coming in and out, and the safe opportunity for people to get onto the river and rent rafts and the like. So we used some artificial intelligence software that's specially made for these kind of situations, I think, and took a look to see where there was opportunity to kind of triangulate cell phone opportunities. And what we learned is that there were about 130,000 visitors to Barber Park this year, and about 99,000 of those were unique visitors, meaning they're people that are coming on individually. They're not necessarily coming many times. So we know there's roughly 100,000 different people. So we looked at the frequency of the visits, and you can see, of course, on the chart here that when float season starts, the number of visitors to the park just balloons. In one case, over 5,000 people. These are daily counts, so it's a very significant number of individuals. Excuse me. So when we look at the number of those visitors by day of the week through the year, we realize, of course, as you would expect, the Friday, Saturday, Sunday time frame really is much larger in terms of numbers of people. Level of service. I'll start in on this a little bit to give you an idea. Excuse me. What our intention with the level of service is to figure out what you're able to participate in either county parks or other park opportunities. What we're looking for really is not just that you've got a location where you can come and participate or to use a park, excuse me, but that there's some quality to the experience that you have. So we use what we call a component evaluation process. We literally look at the main reasons you would come to a park or a trail or or an open space, and we give an evaluation or an assessment of that. We put them on a scale, in this case, of 1 through 5, and our intention is to be able to grade and rank, but grade and rate those, so that the county staff here have the opportunity to prioritize where they would put their capital investment in to fix these kind of things. Art?
Sure. So, kind of looking at awareness and frequency of use. These are some more results from the survey that that speak a little bit to help us as we evaluate the level of service. And so we asked about awareness and frequency of use, and you can see that the first is have you been to those facilities? And you can see that the Boise River Greenway Greenbelt Parkway, 99% of the respondents had visited that, followed by Lucky Peak Lake, the Boise River, the float section between Barber and Ann Morrison, Barber Park itself, and then the Snake River and near Swans Falls were the kind of those top 5, and then it begins to drop off a little bit with the Ridge to Rivers trails and the Ada Eagle Bike Park. So those that had visited, you could also see, we also asked about how frequently they visited, and you can see that 36% of those that went to the Greenbelt pathway went at least once a week, and followed by 17% that went at least once a month. So we asked about kind of the overall condition of the park sites, and Jeff had talked about this a little earlier. You can see that they rated those in the excellent and good condition, over 90% in each one of the districts, as well as overall. So as we looked at the inventory, one of the things that we looked at was total acreage for accessible, for parks and waterways and trails, as well as miles of trails. We pulled all that together, got all of that off of the GIS and from the county, as well as other surrounding jurisdictions, to look at just the magnitude of open space and trails within the county that were available to citizens. So as we looked at each one of those facilities, as Jeff mentioned, we not only looked at the size of those, but we also looked at the number of components that were in there, and then we looked at the quality of those. So we were able to provide both a quantity as well as a quality evaluation of each one of the recreation areas. And this is just a sample of the Hubbard Reservoir recreation area. At 365 acres, it's an open space area, and its location. And then we looked at those amenities there, the multi-use trail, the restrooms, and then the monument signage. and we're able to kind of look at the quantity of those, and then you'll see over on the right hand side kind of that quality rating of a 1 being it's currently critical to take advantage of, and happy to say that none of the facilities that we looked at fell into that grading of a priority 1. Priority 2 is there's some potential critical needs, 3 being necessary but not critical, 4 being that it's recommended, and 5 that it's really early in the life cycle of that component. And so as we looked at the trails, as I mentioned, there were no priority 1s within that, and this shows you that there's a kind of the majority of those components were in that 3 to 5 range, so still in good condition. Those in the 3 range needing regular maintenance and a little TLC at 39%.
Okay. So some observations that were made when we went through each of the recreation areas. The parks and facilities, again, are well maintained. We found no instances of public safety hazards. There is a significant amount of undeveloped space. Many county park areas, and particularly, say, the Greenbelt, they're managed in partnership with other agencies. And same thing with the Lucky Peak Reservoir. The boat docks are maintained by the county, but the Corps of Engineers and the state they have different roles in terms of who manages which parts. And so they work very, very well together, is my observation, to create an amazing recreation opportunity for the county. Trail delineation, conditions, quality, it varied just a little bit by site, but overall we're really good. There are some opportunities, I think, to make some modifications, but overall very hikeable, very walkable area. Park and trail users are very active, and they're active in the biking community. Some parks and trail users may be dog owners as well. There's limited signage we found relating to off-leash dogs, perhaps around some of the conservation areas or outside of those areas. So we realized, that Barber Park sees very heavy traffic, parking challenges, competing activities in a relatively small space, given the number of people that visit the park in the summer. There's a lack of trail maps and wayfinding signage in some areas. Signage often lacks information on the level of difficulty or loop length. And some people that isn't an issue. For some people that's important, especially relating to individuals, perhaps older adults or individuals that may have minor disabilities. Finding places to park, especially around the Greenbelt, could be more communicated to people. Could be some additional wayfinding signs to say, for the Greenbelt, park here. But again, we'll be still looking at all of that as the study goes on. So that's what we've learned. And we conducted this morning a visioning workshop with staff, and we'll continue to work toward developing recommendations, or we'll start to work in that end now that we've had this opportunity to present our findings, and we'll work toward that. Eventually, we'll work on a draft plan with recommendations. There'll be cost estimates both for operating and maintenance, as well as capital costs that'll go with the recommendations. We'll present that again, and then the final master plan will come forward for adoption, and we'll see again how much additional input we may end up with between now and then. And again, your input into the planning process is really what makes this work. So with that said, our contact information is here. You can feel free to contact us by email, and we're happy to hear recommendations or suggestions on the future of Ada County Parks and Waterways. And we'll look over to our social media coordinator and ask if there are any questions from our folks online.
No questions yet. People have been pretty tuned in and don't have any questions. So maybe we'll give them a couple minutes to think about some. While we're waiting, what are some major other master plans you guys have done around the country?
Oh my goodness. We've done quite a number. BerryDunn, as an organization, has done over 650 master plans or feasibility studies, and very similar in regard to the kinds of things that we look for in order to determine, again, how well a community delivers parks and recreation services and what they can do to be even better. I don't know, Art, how many have you done? Do you have
So I think
kind of a number?
of importance to this plan, I've had the opportunity to complete the master plan earlier this summer for the city of Meridian, and I'm in the process of finishing the master plan and providing that for the city of Nampa. And so I've had the opportunity to be here in the Treasure Valley for about a year and a half now, on and off. And so very, very happy to be here and be a part of the growth of the Treasure Valley.
Yeah, and I've completed recently for Springfield, Oregon, the Willamette Lane Park and Recreation District's master plan. In the process with Art in the city of Novato, California, city of Jurupa, California, in Washington, the city of Moses Lake. City of Kirkland, Washington. Those are all cities that I've led projects in the recent past.
Awesome. Yeah, looks like no questions and people are kind of leaving, so we can do some final comments. And if you're watching and you do have a question, feel free to contact Jeff or Art, or reach out to us here at Ada County Parks and Waterways, and we'll try to get your questions answered as best we can.
Okay.
Thank you all very much for attending.
Yes, thank you so much, and I guess we'll say good night.